it's a beautifully constructed presentation and design. Every moment of that presentation was controlled, and when you look at the design, every moment is controlled and thought about, considered. So it has real power in its completeness or its constructedness. So I think that's really lovely. You're struck by the site plan. I know the site that you're talking about. The building gets built, but is it intentional that everything around it is not built, or?
Definitely, that was certainly something that really struck me when I went to site, that there is literally nothing there and you're surrounded by this huge expanse, and I think that was something that I kept with throughout the project, because I wanted that huge expanse of space so that, it was almost, when you see movies and you get that real sort of like the zoom in, zoom out, like really quickly, and you've got that huge expanse of space and you kind of have nothing to do but focus on what you're there for.
I mean, that's its power in a way, isn't it? Like, the temptation would be to form a wonderful parkland or a garden or something for the whole of the community, but really the power of the wasteland and grasses which are left to go to seed and to move in the wind and to just let time take the whole place over, with the exception of these fantastic series of sequential chambers through which you move, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, it's a great argument for just letting it go, just giving it its head, like life itself in a way. And it's interesting, Natalie, to have followed you through the year. It's been I think a privilege for all of us who just come in occasionally to see all of these schemes, and just to see you bring things to a fine point of tune is very nice. It gives you a very firm foundation for your future, I think. You should be feeling reasonably confident now to take your first steps outside of the enclave of a university.
Thank you.
And they're very beautiful.
Peter?
Rick and I were teaching in Namibia, and we went to the desert. Do you remember that? And we went through the Red Desert, which is amazing, which are these red sand dunes. But we went to a town, I forget the name of that town, that German town that was covered by sand dunes.
Began with L.
And it's on the coast. And what was amazing about it was just this sort of timeless sand dune with buildings just popping their noses out of it, and their windows and their fireplaces. And so the sand dune dominated, but it was the storytelling of these little bits of building which made you think about the place a lot. And I think you've done that really cleverly. I think you've let this concrete platform, which actually tells so many stories about the past if you investigate and think about it, dominate, and then just cleverly given a hint or two of what might be going on underneath, And I think the balance of those two has been really clever, and that's something you've worked out. I mean, how many times have you redesigned it?
A lot. Countless.
Something you've worked out a lot, and I wonder about this one here, right? It just seems a little bit foreign to the other ones personally, but I love the idea that you have people above and a person below. I love that idea, and I love the longness of it too. I think that's beautiful. I think this is a lovely room, and I think the singular nature of looking at someone in that room will be very, very profound. The balance that you've got happening, and even in your plan, the asymmetrical quality of it was lovely as well, which the asymmetric quality to life, And then, of course, the boat got introduced, which I know was spoken about. And there's this lovely departure, this departure into space. Quite different to arrival on a platform, departure into space, There's a lot to it, and I really commend you. It's great.
Thank you.
I like also that you presented us not with so much objects, but a way of conceiving the space of a room. And it just confirms how much. I was speaking earlier about whether architecture can tell a political story. And it can, but it struggles. Whereas architecture is very articulate about space and about shaping experiences of enclosures, and the degree of openness and the degree of closure in each of these is testament to that power that it has. Just what is solid, what is void, what is the heights and widths and all that. It's an incredibly powerful thing that architecture can do. I must admit I disagree with everyone about desolate spaces, because when I think to this is not a criticism of your landscape, but when I think of the most beautiful crematoria that I know, and I don't know if you've travelled yet, have you travelled to Sweden?
No, I've studied it quite a bit, but
Yeah.
I haven't been
Because
there.
the landscape there contains open air spaces, like the Viking cremation is out of doors, that one that has the positioning of the body in the landscape, and the hilltop with its little grove and the improbable gathering of water on the top of the hill. There's so many elements within the landscape which speak about the very ancient thing about going either back to the earth or up in fire. So, and I think there's another one, amazing crematorium by Alvar Aalto's early partner, which is in Turku. And Turku's outside the little town, or the medium-sized, Erik Bryggman is the architect. There is this beautiful crematorium building where actually it's not a crematorium, I lied. This part of it, the coffin is taken out, and you see, it's a journey through the chapel, and then out. You don't go back on yourself, you just keep going as you're suggesting, and you follow the coffin into the grounds, and you watch the body be buried, but you could equally take it to be going to another. So there was a lot done in the introduction of the idea of burning people as opposed to burying people in Northern Europe, and that was introduced in the beginning of the 20th century. And a big discussion about how you could bring ceremony to it, because it was considered a difficult thing to persuade people to go through. But I also think that people today, when you go to modern crematoria, all you see is car after car, like death after death. Like you're not alone in this desolate landscape, because there's another group coming behind you. It's a very big business. In fact, I'm so now committed to the do-it-yourself burial systems that there's a great society in England which is to do with taking control over the death process and not going through these big companies that make money out of people's grief.
That's the Indians have done for so long.
So there's extremely interesting project type, I think. But the most powerful thing that you'll find in any of the ones that are wonderful is the making of the room where you are with the person who has died. And in Scandinavian culture, certainly in Norway, you don't address the congregation, everyone talks to the body. So it's like having your last discussion is with the body, and your lament is to the dead person. So there's so much in it in terms of making that space that happens within, and how you get there and how you leave, and we've tackled all of those.
Nat, in Western New South Wales there's a place called Lake Mungo. And it's an expanse of singular landscape. And the Aboriginal people used to take their dead there, and they'd, as a tribe, dig a hole and bury them sitting up in the ground. And when the wind blows, sometimes you get a skull exposed in this landscape. and that's it.
Natural Death Society. Anyway.
Yeah, the Aboriginals.
Yes, they're on the phone. Yeah, very nice, very nice.
Thank you.
I might conclude with something about death, but something about the whole studio as well. And of course I'm reminded, because of this, of the Emperor Hadrian, who designed the Pantheon. And Hadrian lived in this very interesting time, and if you read Margaret Yourcenau's Memoirs of Hadrian, she writes at the beginning what attracted her, that here was this man who lived in this time when the old gods had died, but the new one, Christ, had not yet come. And it was this moment when man stood alone. And so he did two very signal things, among lots of other things. He built the Pantheon as the center of all of Rome. All the gods were in recesses around the walls. At the middle was nothing. It was a void where man had to regard himself.
And the travelling light.
And the travelling light. So you were there in the universe, immensely intimidating. But then he drew a line around Rome. He built all those great walls, Hadrian's Wall, there's one in Syria, there was a palace to define territorially what man as a physical entity was. What I find immensely compelling about all these projects, which have a commonality, is that they're remarkably aware of what Newcastle is, not simply geographically, but as a kind of political, social, historical entity. And I would make an argument that we're in this period when the old gods are dying. Capitalism, consumerism, resource extraction, these are the old gods, but we still see them operating out there. They take a long time to die. The new gods, communality, sustainability, they're being born right now, but we're in this interesting moment where we have to face the same thing, that we're actually on our own. We're the ones who make the decisions about how we negotiate this territory. And what I find really amazing about all these projects is that all these students are doing that. They're negotiating in this territory between memory and materiality, and using architecture as a tool to navigate that territory. And so, to me, it's immensely, profoundly optimistic in that sense. There is a melancholy to these projects, but also an awareness that within that space between what things are or have been and what we want them to be, that's the space in which we can act. So I kind of leave the room and leave the semester with this immense sense of, wow, that things are not simply being talked about, not simply being discussed, but being deliberated. So I would say congratulations everyone, and thank you very much for the amazing work.
Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you, Tom.